And I really enjoyed, I caught the end of James' presentation. Really like the way he thinks. Practical, down to earth, speaks a language that we can all understand and gives really useful, implementable tips and information. So that's just great. We need more of that.
Perfect, perfect. And talking about implementable, you're going to talk us through TRM and hotel security skills for EP Agent of Tomorrow. As we start traveling again, this is the topic, I feel. Obviously all the other topics are very important, but this kind of sums them up. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me. Hi to everybody in whatever time zone you're in. We've got half an hour, which isn't a tremendous amount of time. And we're going to chat a little bit about going forward, what the EP agent has to consider, whether it's in travel risk management, and more specifically, when looking at hotel security. I don't want to spend, forgive me, half an hour speaking about COVID-19. We'll touch on it, but we're going to speak about everything. I want to start at the beginning. Many times over the last months, Phelim, in all our conferences, Convergence and ESRM, we hear, I guess, my generation speaking about, old dogs, knuckle draggers, the way we used to do things. The youngsters don't understand, they're all in the screen, etc. And they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And a lot of what was done over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years worked, and it worked very well. But just because we've always done something a certain way doesn't mean it's correct or relevant for today, right? So we have to learn new tricks if we are to evolve with the industry. Because if we don't, we as EP are going to become irrelevant. What we're seeing is the new generation of clients, of principals, of CEOs, C-suite executives are rapidly becoming the millennial generation. They're moving into leadership. You've got 25 to 35 to 40-year-old CEOs, COOs, CTOs who are our clients. And this is a generation who view the world very, very differently and view protection and view threat very differently to the way maybe we traditionally did or do. They also go shopping differently. The way they look for service providers and their buying decisions are made very, very differently to what it was in the past. Right? The days of the black suits and earpieces and dark glasses are pretty much dying, except in very specific markets. The up and coming clients for EP, they don't want to see us. They don't want to feel us. They want a covert presence, relaxed, laid back, out of the way unless they need you. They don't want to be handled. They don't want to show. They don't want big black cars. They don't want to be inconvenienced. They want you to facilitate productivity and success. And we need to learn how to do that. And if we don't keep moving, if we don't keep learning, we're going to fall by the wayside. And that's just an overview. And the way we do that is what we're doing on this conference. It's education. It's educating ourselves, learning, sharing. And for me, I guess after 25 years in industry and operational and management and consulting, if I was to choose one thing that we need to get better at going forward, it's this, it's communication. And I love the quote by George Bernard Shaw, right? It's the illusion that it's taken place. We think we've communicated our requirements and our expectations as the protection element of a trip or of a function of a corporation. We think we've communicated that to the principal or to the PA or to the board or to the travel management company or the travel manager within the corporation. We think that we've explained what it is we need from the hotel, from the transport provider, the VIP services at the airport. We sent an email, we sent a WhatsApp, we sent a text, right? And we think it's all done. But more often than not, the communication isn't effective. And we as EP professionals don't really get the message across of what it is we need. And as things become more web-based and app-based, there's less human interaction, which makes it even more challenging, right, to get the services and the correct logistics in place for what we need. So we could spend a day speaking about TRM, which we're not going to do, but in very, very broad brushstrokes. So travel risk management has obviously an intel aspect of a threat assessment for the location, the city, the country that the principal is visiting, the actual risk assessment or threat assessment on the principal themselves, etc. Right? We've got the planning and logistics function of it, which is often not up to us. So it's done by the personal assistant, by a travel management company, or a department within the corporation. And then you've got the actual SOPs and incident management and everything around that. Training, information security, working with vendors, the flights, the hotels, the ground transportation, communication protocols, tracking of your executives while they are traveling, etc. Now, all these pieces, and there's many, many, many more of them, are important to us as EP. The problem is we seem to be having less and less say, because what you have suddenly is the people who plan the trips have a transport provider, one of the big global app-based transport providers, and they make bookings for vehicles and drivers all over the world, and they say, well, we work with ABC Transport. Now, you may be traveling to Athens, and your local support on the ground in Athens may say, I've got a really good transport provider here in Athens. And the corporation say, yes, but we use ABC Transportation, and they don't work with that guy. And then you land up on the ground with terrible vehicles and terrible drivers because you didn't really get a say, you didn't really get involved, because it's become, as the world consolidates, and we've seen it in our own industry of late, of massive corporations, excuse me, buying up smaller EP companies. And that's happening in every aspect of industry, excuse me. So as things consolidate, our access to specific vendors, specific support personnel that we want to work with, who can make our job easier, becomes more and more difficult. Hence, we need to be more involved. We need to have better communication with the people taking care of travel so that we can influence those factors to our advantage when finally there'll be boots on the ground. So, I was thinking about kind of this slight generation gap, the slight dissonance that we have, right? From the navigation apps to those of us who can still read a map, and paper boarding passes and online boarding passes and keyless rooms and pandemics and all these good things. Now, has everything changed? No. But what's changed and what do we have to pay attention to? And is all the paper irrelevant? Should I have a paper boarding pass or a paper map as well as what I have on my phone, etc.? And what do we do about COVID-19? And I think that this is kind of how some people feel some of the time. And it's understandable. There's a lot going on. But I think before I get into the hotel security piece, it's super important to understand that the new generation, right, can learn from the old generation, the same as the older generation can learn from the younger. So we were all saying the older generation, look, you got to learn cyber, you got to learn IT, TSCM, IoT, Wi-Fi, you got to understand all these threats, etc. And yes, you do. But by the same token, when you're somewhere in Africa and suddenly you have zero connectivity on anything, except possibly your sat phone if you have one, you need to know how to navigate. And you need to have a hard copy of all your numbers written down. And you need to be able to solve problems in the field without a device and without an internet connection. and the people who came from the previous generation, I guess, I don't mean to sound old, but knew how to do that because that's how we operated back then. So yes, there's what to learn from everybody. And we need to open our minds and understand that everybody in the industry brings something to the table that we can learn from each other. And I think that of late, we've been so focused on cyber and IT and information security and data security that sometimes we lose sight of the problem solving in EP that's necessary when you're boots on the ground and you're driving down a road, you know, somewhere in the bush outside the Abuja, and there's two guys with AKs burning tires in the middle of the street. Your cell phone is not going to solve the problem. So we kind of need to keep that balance in mind. Now, I'm going to move over to hotels, and we'll talk about COVID in that space. I'm going to preface this, and I'm sorry if people disagree. I don't think there's a new normal. COVID will come and COVID will pass, as did the Spanish flu, as did swine flu, as did World War II, as did many other things that have befallen humankind in its history. It might take another 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, but I don't believe the world will never go back to the way it was, and we'll never travel again, and we will, for sure. And I want to talk about standards for a second, because within travel risk management at the moment, the ISO 31013 standard that's meant to be being introduced in 2021 is significant. Now, this isn't a certifiable standard as I understand it. Right now it's guidelines, but they are finally, ISO are putting out guidelines in terms of hotels, in terms of transportation, in terms of travel risk management, which is fantastic. But what does that mean exactly? It's super important to understand that standards are a means, not an end. A standard, an ISO standard, is a fantastic beginning. It means that there's a minimum standard, a minimum requirement that, whether it's corporations or hotels or transport providers, whoever it is, will need to meet. That doesn't mean, well, now we can kick back. We don't have to worry about security at the hotel because they meet the ISO standard. What standards do is they ensure proper consideration of risk factors, meaning that people wanting to meet those standards are going to have to actually consider all the risks involved, tick all the boxes, meet all the standards. Furthermore, it provides us as EP operators and providers a consistent and measurable baseline. So now when I'm looking for a hotel in Amman, I've actually got a baseline that if hotels are meeting a standard, and we'll talk more about hotel standards in a minute, well, that makes my life easier when selecting. Because often the advance isn't going to get there 2 months before, the advance is going to get there 2 days before. And the travel manager already ordered the hotel, they booked the hotel. So unless it's a complete disaster, even if I'm not thrilled with it as the EP lead, I'm going to have to make do, I'm going to have to figure it out. So when we talk about standards, which we will in a second, standards are always better when it's a third-party accreditation, that you're not marking your own homework, so to speak. And I'll go into that in a second. And as an EP providers, we build on a standard. We don't rely on it. The standard is like the foundation, the building blocks that we know are there in place. And then we are going to build on that to mitigate risk and to contain and control a crisis event should it happen. So moving into the realm of hotel security, which has been kind of a pet project of mine for some years now. Hotels do not take security very seriously at the best of times. Sorry to say it, but they don't. And I've traveled all over the world and trained hotel personnel and done assessments and planned security master plans for new build hotels. And it's a bit of an uphill battle. So let's think about what we will be facing as the EP agents of tomorrow. Firstly, hotels, because of COVID especially, are more and more going to be an app-based experience. Until now, hotels, while there were apps, they wanted the interpersonal relationship with the guest. They want the bellman to open your door. they want the receptionist to chat with you. They want someone to take you up to your room, open the room, take your luggage, explain all the facilities of the hotel. They want that guest interaction. But as a result of COVID, the hotels have been running very rapidly to the app-based solutions, so that there's as little as possible contact between human beings. And you can basically go through your hotel experience with as little human contact as possible. Then we're going to talk about standards. We're going to talk a little bit about smart rooms, which certain hotel chains have already begun, and what James was also speaking about, the challenges of privacy. So when we talk about hotel standards, so if I'm an EP agent and we've got a 10-city or 10-country trip coming up, my or the client's management are going to book hotels. Now, they might or might not ask me about specific hotels. And I might know from previous experience that this hotel has good security or that hotel has better security. Beyond that, I don't really have a measurement of whether the hotel is taking security in a serious way. Now, there are companies out there providing certification, but it's a self-certification. So ABC Security says, I'm going to audit your hotel to a standard that I devised. So the ABC Hotel Security Standard, I can call it whatever I want, yes? I can call it the Universal Hotel Security Standard, but the bottom line is it's ABC's security standard. I audit the hotel and I certify it. So I'm basically marking my own homework. So that certification, while it does say something, but it's not really an objective certification as to whether the hotel is meeting a standard. There has never been, and there is not, a global hotel security standard from the hotel industry, as they don't want it. But there is, for the first time, a company, a UK-based company actually, called GSA Accreditation, who succeeded in getting a third-party accreditation standard for hotels. So those of you in the UK know SFJ Awards. So it's a government-level body that provides accreditation, provides certification. So finally here we have an organization auditing hotels for security in a very serious way. The results of the audit, however, are submitted to a third party who decides whether the hotel passes or doesn't pass and gets certified to a standard. Hence, the standard is independent, and the people doing the audit have no influence on whether the hotel gets certified or accredited or not. Now, if a standard like that theoretically caught on in corporations, and we told our clients and our corporations, hey, there is a standard like this in the world. So then if I'm going to Johannesburg, well, I can look up which hotels have this accreditation, and I know for sure that those hotels are meeting these standards as set out by an independent government level body. And that gives me a fantastic starting point for selecting hotels. Right? I know that they've got robust procedures. I know that something like COVID-19 as well. For this standard, by the way, there's a COVID standard also by SFJ Awards. So I know that the hotel is meeting that. We have seen some horrendous things of late where journalists have gone into hotels, used ultraviolet ink to mark sheets and pillow slips and TV remotes. The hotel swearing that everything gets wiped down, sanitized, sprayed, linens get changed every day, and then they go back with the ultraviolet light, 24 hours later, and the sheets weren't changed and the remote wasn't wiped down, etc. Now, when we're taking clients into hotels, we have a massive duty of care right now with COVID-19. And it's not good enough that the hotel manager tells us, oh yes, these are what we do. We follow, Radisson protocols, right? We want an external auditor, independent, to make sure that the hotels where we're taking our clients are absolutely meeting the best practices and the best possible mitigation for COVID-19 that's possible. And there are companies and tools out there to do it. And standards need to get revisited once a year, not a once-off audit. But if we can get that right as EP agents, that's going to make our lives, especially with COVID, much, much, much easier. The next piece we have is that, as we were saying, that the hotel experience is going to be app-based. So from the bookings to the check-in, to the room access, room service, ordering, it's all going to happen on the app. Now that for normal people is like, oh, wow, that's great. But for EP, that can be problematic. Because as many of you know, when you're traveling internationally, the advance gets the room keys before the client arrives. The client arrives, take them up to the room, let them in, we've swept the room, it's all good. When the key is now in the phone, and I'm leaving aside right now the privacy issues, right? How easy can the phone be cloned or hacked so that somebody can access my client's room? The clients don't really want to deal with that, going into an app and opening the app and holding their phone to the door, etc. So now all that information has got to be on my phone. So we've already got a lot of the client's information. Now we're going to have more. We're going to have this all sitting on the app on our phone, including the access to the client's room, etc. It changes the dynamic. It's going to change the interaction that we're going to have with the clients, right? If the client wants to go up to their room and now you've got to start explaining how to use the app, etc. And the amazing thing is a lot of the clients, as tech savvy as they are, they don't want to deal with this kind of inconvenience for them. They just want us to make everything happen. The apps might make it actually harder for us to do, but we will find solutions. But it's something that we need to think about, right? Before I just got 6 keys, gave each agent a key to everybody's rooms. Awesome. To do that on the app with the hotel might not be as easy. I'm rushing because we don't have a huge amount of time. I apologize. Smart rooms. Well, it's a challenge. I actually wrote an article, if anybody wants to ask me afterwards, I'll send it to you, about IoT Wi-Fi devices in hotels. There have been many, many, many intrusions and hacks through IoT Wi-Fi devices in hotel rooms. One of the biggest challenges is that a lot of these devices sit on the hotel's network. They're not sitting on a separate network, on a separate server. So if somebody hacks one of these devices, they are effectively into the hotel's database, into everybody's information. Phelim spoke about the USB ports. Simple thing, yeah. So the client charges the phone, plugs into the lamp, and again, they're exposed. Alexas, Siris, all those, we know how easily they can be accessed. Smart TVs. Each EP detail and each corporation will make their SOPs as they go. But we spoke about the tech-enabled EP, the tech EP guy. He is not meant to replace a TSCM team and is not meant to replace a cybersecurity specialist. But I think what we should call him is a technically enabled or technically savvy EP agent. But if I'm meant to protect my client from physical harm, from harm to his reputation, protect his information and his privacy or her privacy, and the corporate name and the image and all these things, and I don't understand the threats that a smart room can present to my client, then it is like saying I'm an EP agent, but I don't understand what hostile surveillance is. I'm an EP agent, but I actually don't know how to drive. I'm an EP agent, but I haven't done even a basic first aid course. In today's world, to have basic technical understanding about the threats that are presented by all these smart devices, by all these Wi-Fi devices, etc., is basics. And it's interesting if anyone is teaching that. A guy like James sounds to me like he'd be great to do a course like that, right? It's like the tech-enabled guy 101. Exactly. You don't have to be able to code or to program. You just need the knowledge to tell the client, hey, oh, look, or when you do the advance, look, we need to get these devices out of the room, please. We don't want an Alexa, we don't want this, we don't want that. to tell the client, hey, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do, or here's a data blocker, or here's a charging cable that only has one strand that can only charge, can't transfer data. Whatever the solutions are, there's plenty of super qualified people out there to give you solutions, but talk to them. Find out what the solutions are. Warn the client, tell the client what the possible vulnerabilities are, because they might not be thinking about it. Smart glass, by the way, right? The glass today that, it's opaque and you can press a button and then it becomes tinted and you can't see in. Well, that's cool. But I don't know if people are aware that smart glass is going places. I read an article recently that said, people doodle in the steam, in the shower. They draw stuff in the steam on the glass, apparently. And there's a smart glass development that will let you take a screenshot, that the glass will actually take a screenshot of your doodling. Well, that's cool, but if it can take a screenshot, maybe it can take a picture of who's in the shower. And the smart TV that's built into the mirror in hotels sometimes, well, does it have capacity to take pictures and record, etc.? So this is just getting more and more complex for us. Which brings me to the last piece, privacy. So especially because of COVID, right? I just preface this by saying COVID is about risk tolerance, folks. Nothing more, nothing less. We all drive cars in the knowledge that we could be in an accident, right? We do everything in life tolerating a certain risk. Whether our principals travel or don't travel or go to hotels or etc., whatever it is down to risk tolerance. If the client says, I want to go on the strip, we're taking the jet and we're going somewhere, then there we will go. We are the guys that are going to have to figure out how we sanitize vehicles, if there should be dividers in vehicles, whether we want to book, 5 rooms in that corridor of the hotel to make sure that no one is in the rooms next door to the principal, they won't bump into people, whatever protocols we want the hotel to do in terms of housekeeping, room keeping. Maybe we want an agent to be there with the housekeeper when they clean the room. Again, I could speak on COVID, a whole separate discussion. But having said that, our clients are going to be, for the foreseeable future, conducting meetings and proprietary meetings on Zoom, Teams, Skype, whatever, from their room, from their suites. Something they didn't really used to do. They used to go to meetings, right? And go to a conference room, go to an office, or clients used to come to them at their corporate headquarters. But now we're going to see a lot more of this going on in hotels, which means that things like TSCM sweeps will have to be done regularly and properly. Wi-Fi connections, maybe not relying on the hotel's Wi-Fi connection, which again can be easily ghosted by someone sitting in the parking lot, but rather travel. We've done this for clients many times when they're on some conference call. We travel with the mobile hotspot and a VPN, and then off you go, and you don't get on the hotel's Wi-Fi at all. It's going to be very, very important that we as EP professionals are going to be able to understand how to ensure our principals' privacy in the hotel room or in the hotel suite, in the conference room in the hotel suite, because a lot more business for the next few months certainly is going to be going on there. And we need to understand technically how we need to be prepared, how to advise the client or the PA to set that up in a way that's going to look after the client's privacy. Otherwise, they will be very exposed. At the end of the day, folks, EP is still EP, right? If we still, if you mess up arrival or departure, that's it, right? You'll be looking for a job. We still have to deal with the threats that are around, whether the threat is slipping on a banana peel, a riot, earthquake, or upset member of the public, or whatever threats they are. And I feel that sometimes now we're getting so lost in the cyber data protection, information protection side of things that we kind of forget that it might just be some guy throwing a pie in the client's face in the street. So going forward, we need to evolve, but we can't leave the basics behind us. We need to share information. We need to share knowledge, as these wonderful conferences allow us to do. And that way, as an industry, we can develop and we can learn and we can stay relevant to our principals, because if we're not, they're not going to keep us around. Thanks for listening.
Fantastic. And thanks, Mac, for a really thoughtful presentation. It really, sums up a lot of the things we're saying, but takes it to the next level. What are we going to do when we start traveling again? And we will, as you said. We've got some nice comments in the audience. Joe also says, "Fantastic, Mac." Tom Haney says,
Hi, Joe.
Elijah Shaw says, "You nailed it, Mac." We got nice
Thank you, Elijah.
greetings from Roger, from James. We had earlier quite a bit of discussion about the ISO standards with Raymond, Ubaid, and Fernando, which is really good. You mentioned the GSA accreditation. I believe we have colleagues in the audience.
Oh, great.
So that's good. And Andre and Sean had some great things to say before. Miranda says, great presentation, Mac. John Vargas says, thank you, Mac. You're getting a lot of praise. This is really good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
As well as Effion and Mary McAllister. What's next for you, Mac?
Well, things are slowly opening up. Things are starting to move. Optimistic as ever, but now also the summer's over. So time to get back to work. And life's an adventure, guys. It's onward and upward, as they say.
Perfect. Well, we look forward to seeing you again soon. I know the IPSB is not in December, but hopefully you'll make it to London in January or something like that. We'll
that would be great.
Yeah, we'll start traveling again soon.
Great. Have a good week.